Abby, so good to see you. A really important topic today. 5 financial blind spots that can burden a grieving spouse. The
Mhm.
loss of a spouse is overwhelming, and for many survivors, it also brings unexpected financial surprises. So let's talk through those 5 common blind spots. First is surprise debt. Many surviving spouses are caught off guard by debts they didn't know existed. So, how can couples avoid this surprise?
This is all about transparency, and that's easier said than done in some instances. Some couples are very transparent and they make their financial decisions together. Other
Mhm.
times, somebody wants to go and buy $100,000 truck, and the other spouse doesn't think that's a great idea. And so the spouse that wants the truck goes and gets a credit card or a line of credit or a car loan, and maybe just hides that from the spouse. And that's that's going to be really tough because that's something that not only is a surviving spouse going through so many changes and the emotional impact of losing their life partner, but also they have this potential huge bill that they are
Right,
most likely responsible for.
right.
And so this is just all about transparency and thinking through, what's the worst case scenario here? Best case scenario is I hide this from my spouse for 5 to 7 years as I pay off this car that they don't know about. And then I feel guilty for the rest of my life, probably. Worst case scenario is you are not able to do that and you pass away, and then your grieving spouse is left to deal with that.
Mhm.
And they might not have planned that in the overall budget. So just making sure everybody is on the same page and making those financial decisions together. And again, easier said than done, but it is incredibly important to do that.
Right. Number 2, being locked out of accounts. It's not uncommon for a surviving spouse to face delays accessing money when accounts are frozen or tied up in probate. So, how can these delays be avoided?
Yeah, this is a huge one. And we always say, even if you have a fantastic estate plan and everything, all your beneficiaries are correct and everything legally is set up, it's kind of meaningless these days unless you have the passwords to access those accounts. And so, what we recommend for everybody is having some type of a password manager, like a household password manager, whether that's a protected Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet that's protected, or a actual password manager that you can pay for. There's one that's really great called LastPass. And this is true for not only spouses, but also for maybe your kids are going to take over when you're no longer able to make those financial decisions and they need to help you pay bills. But really for everybody. So at any point in time, this isn't fun to think about, but at any point in time, any of us could go into the hospital and be incapacitated. And there's some stuff that's not set automatically. So you have to have kind of whether it's a book or a document or a password manager that somebody you really trust can get to. In this instance, we're talking about the surviving spouse, but even if they're not going and logging into those accounts on a daily basis, they need to know what company is, if you have a mortgage, what company's the mortgage with, what bills need to be actually manually paid every month, what's set on automatic, and all of that can be put into a spreadsheet, which is what we recommend. Mark, this is automatic, this is what needs to be paid every month, so that somebody can take over, whether you are in the hospital for an extended period of time or whether you pass away. Things don't just grind
Mhm.
to a halt, and bills can slip through the cracks. So that's really what we recommend for everybody.
Mhm. Number 3, invisible credit records. Some widows discover they have little or no credit history in their own name. So, what steps can couples take to ensure that they both have established credit?
Yeah, this is a big one because there's typically somebody not typically, but sometimes there's one spouse that has most things in their name, the
Right.
mortgage in their name, the cars are in their name, and it's just done for many different reasons. Maybe it's logistically easy. Maybe when you started your marriage, that person had the stronger credit. And then what happens is the other one doesn't have any established credit at all, and that might be fine in right now, but if something does happen to your spouse, then there's a lot of things that might need to be done, and you need to have a strong credit score for that. So starting with putting both names on different types of loans, whether that's a mortgage, whether that's a car loan, opening up credit cards, whether you're going to use them or not, opening up credit cards to establish the other spouse's credit history, those type things. And, I'm not recommending for that person to go and take on a bunch of debt just to have a credit score. That's not what I'm recommending, but you can add their name to certain things. You can open up a credit card in their name, and start to put maybe a couple of monthly household bills on it or something. If you go and buy a car and you choose to get a car loan, maybe the next one you buy, that goes in that spouse's name so that they can start to establish that credit. And that really protects them in the event they need that and they don't have their spouse that has the strong credit.
Mm-hmm. Number 4, the reality of a new budget. When one spouse handles all the finances, the true cost of daily life can be eye-opening.
That's very, very true. Especially if you're not in the day-to-day, and especially so because inflation has been so bad for, the past 6 years now, not so much anymore, but it's still, things are very expensive. So if you haven't looked at a budget in 10, 15, 20 years, and you're suddenly having to manage all these household bills, it can be incredibly overwhelming. So just having those family meetings, what we always recommend and encourage our clients to do, most of the time, one of the spouses is what we call the point person. So they're the ones that know where all the accounts are. They're up to date on everything. They check the things. They are the one that asks most of the questions in the meetings. They're the ones that are really kind of the driver of the decisions, and the other spouse really defers to them. And that's fine. That's a dynamic that works for a lot of people, but bringing in the spouse that's not the point person, that maybe doesn't know everything that's going on, and just letting them sit there and listen and start to ask some questions and start to build some confidence of, okay, I at least know what's going on in general. I might not know all the minutia, but I know what's happening in general. I know, kind of what our monthly budget is on a regular month. And I know where the income is coming from. And then most importantly, I have a relationship with the advisor,
right?
And I know I can go to that person. We already trust them. They've already been vetted by both spouses. And they'll be able to tell the client, what the next step is, and maybe share more information when that time comes. So that's incredibly important to have both spouses in as many meetings as possible.
Right. And then last, higher tax brackets after loss. This is also known as the widow's tax. Why is that?
Yeah, this is one that most people don't ever think about. So when you lose a spouse, you go from being able to, and you can see here the 2026 federal tax brackets, you go from married filing jointly, which is heavily tax advantaged, to filing single. You have 1 year after the loss of your spouse to file as a widow, and then you move to the single tax bracket. You can make a lot less income as a single person than as a married person. So for example, in the 22% bracket, a single person can only have a little under $106,000 before they're bumped into the 24% bracket. Whereas a married couple can have almost $212,000 in that 22% bracket. So what happens is income might not be able to drop that much. So there's been study after study that has showed that expenses don't get cut in half when you lose a spouse. You're still paying the same utilities. You're still paying the same mortgage if you have a mortgage, or the same rent. There might be a 10% drop. I mean, if that, but there's still inflation that has to be looked out for. So income really can't drop as much as a lot of people think it can. And then tax brackets go up. So your tax bill goes up, which eats into your overall budget. And so what's really important is, if you're in a position to do so, which a lot of our clients are doing this and really embracing this, which I really love, but doing Roth conversions right now. So we're doing a strategic approach to how much we convert from their tax deferred accounts to their Roth accounts, but they pay those taxes up front, and they after that can enjoy all of the earnings, all of the contributions, all of the money that's in that Roth account when it comes out, it's completely tax-free.
Right.
And what we encourage people to do, especially if they're married, is utilize your married tax bracket now. Taxes are, especially with all of the new deductions and everything that was passed last year, taxes are at an all-time low. Take advantage of that. You can see here how much they have dramatically decreased. Most people are going to get a much larger refund than they have in the past this year. And so it's really important to take advantage of that, especially if you're married. Do those Roth conversions, because the surviving spouse will be able to pull, if they need additional income, for example, because one of your Social Security benefits is going to drop off, they can pull that from a Roth IRA, and it does not show up on your tax return. It does not increase your income. It's completely tax-free, and that will save even more money than just on the taxes, because it's not going to push them up into that higher tax bracket. And so they're not going to have to increase their income to offset that.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, this is a really helpful action plan, Abby. So if somebody is recognizing that maybe they need to have a conversation with their spouse, and just having somebody like you in the room can help, lower the temperature, make sure everybody's on the same page, make sure that we all know the same, resources that exist. What's the best way to get a hold of you so that you can be in the room for that conversation?
Yeah, you can always call us at 678-442-0255. You can also visit us at theretirementfamily.com. We have a lot of great resources on there, videos, articles. We have a blog. There's also a place where you can send us a direct message. Let us know what's on your mind, what you would like to talk to one of our advisors about. And somebody on our staff will reach out to you, schedule a 15-minute introductory call so that you can talk to an advisor about your personal situation in much more detail. And this is so important, especially with maybe the do-it-yourselfer investors that have managed their finances for forever, but they realize they're getting a little bit older and their spouse is really not going to be able to step into their shoes. And we work with a lot of couples like that might be able to do a lot on their own, but they're worried if they pass away, what's going to happen to the finances, and they might know that their spouse is either not able or not willing to step in and take over. And that's really huge, to start having the advisor involved before that happens, because number one, you can both vet an advisor, because what happens a lot of times is if there's a grieving spouse that is not used to making financial decisions, they are a prime target for somebody to take advantage of them. Yes. So involving an advisor up front, making sure they're vetted before that happens, and getting them familiar with the finances so that they can help take that load off the surviving spouse if they're not the ones that are involved in that daily financial transactions and activities. So it's hugely important.
Right. Have that conversation sooner rather than later. Abby, thank you so much for your help today.
Thank you, Erin.